on Sky News Australia. This is the Rita Panahi Show Overtime.
Welcome to the Rita Panahi Show Overtime. We're back for another year, and what a massive news day we're jumping into, covering everything from a US congresswoman proclaiming her allegiance to a foreign nation and even boasting about subverting the US political system, to Melbourne's youth crime crisis, and of course, as always, plenty of lefties losing it. Joining me today with the latest from the US will be Newsweek Senior Editor-at-Large Josh Hammer. Kinsey Schofield will bring us the latest celebrity news, including some unsavoury revelations about the WWE. But let's start with the latest news with the Australian newspapers, Sophie Ellsworth. Sophie, let's start with this shocking story. A woman with Down syndrome being violently attacked by teenage thugs in Melbourne's Southern Cross train station. The 7 News report has now gone viral around the world. It's being shared widely in the US, the UK, and I should warn viewers, the content here is disturbing.
A woman with Down syndrome set upon by 2 teenagers, their violent attack filmed by friends. After taunting her, they punched her repeatedly in the face, throwing her to the ground and kicking her in the head. An elderly man passing by stepped in as the woman lay helpless on the ground at Southern Cross Station. The brutality all proudly posted on social media.
That was aim. You got what you deserve.
Sophie, it's sickening footage. We do have a youth crime problem in this city, but we've got the state government and the opposition, it seems, who seem to think that raising the age of criminal responsibility is the best way to deal with this. I would think that would invite more of that craziness, not less.
That's right, Rita. And looking at that vision, it's incredibly disturbing. Anyone watching that surely has a awful feeling in their stomach. But this is also really concerning for Melbourne yet again. We've already got a bad enough reputation. We had all those lockdowns and things we've lived through. We've got this crime wave that's sweeping the city. Something needs to be done, Rita, but that is in Southern Cross. That is in a prime location in the middle of the city, and we're seeing these kind of attacks.
Absolutely sickening, and thank God for that elderly man who stepped in, because who knows, that assault could have continued. We could have had even a more catastrophic outcome than what happened to that woman. So thank God there was a good Samaritan who stepped in, because he could have been attacked as well, and people these days are often reluctant to step in. Another victim of Melbourne's youth crime crisis is bravely returning to school. Young Benjamin Fikapuhum is on the front page of today's Herald Sun. He was walking home from school when he was abducted, stabbed, then thrown from a moving car, all allegedly for his mobile phone and other belongings. Sophie, it's been 5 months since the attack, and he told the Herald Sun he's excited to be starting the new school year, but he does have lifelong injuries to contend with. He's got scarring, he's got eyesight loss, hearing loss. It's a young teenage boy having to wear hearing aids to school, but thank God he survived that vicious attack.
Rita, shocking story. I really encourage people to read Susan Delabasic's exclusive in The Australian today, because this young boy is such a fighter and, you know, is going back to school with the right attitude, given the horror he has gone through, every parent and every child's worst nightmare. And he's managed to push through that and have a smile on his face and really positive about the year ahead. So, you know, hat off to him. But this is horrible. And yet again, Rita, this is the serious nature of our crime wave in Melbourne right now.
It is, and it gets downplayed so often. There's so much politics involved here, and we've got a youth crime issue in this city. There's no doubt about that. Now, let's move along to the Guardian veteran reporter, Canberra journalist Katherine Murphy, joining Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's communications team. This has caused all sorts of mockery and commentary online with opposition leader Peter Dutton joining in. He posted this. He wrote, "I am genuinely shocked to see Murphy take a spot to now be officially running lines for Labor. The real outrage is David Crowe missed out. What more must he do to prove his credentials to formally be employed by the Labor Party?" Oh, goodness. What do you make of this decision? Is it a strange call for Katherine Murphy to do this? Is it a strange call for the Prime Minister to hire her?
Well, Rita, she has been in politics for decades. She's very well known in the Canberra Press Gallery, but it's really no surprise that she's going to work for a Labor Prime Minister. I'd be shocked if you said she was going to work for Peter Dutton. She's repeatedly written attack pieces on Peter Dutton, calling him polarising, accusing him of dividing the country over The Voice, fake news. The list goes on. She calls him polarising. She was in some of her columns, very nice towards Anthony Albanese. She said in one column, Airbus elbow, as he's referred to, she said his travel was justified. He was doing a good thing for the country. So it's no surprise she's now going to go and work for him. But whether she's going to be a good appointment or not remains to be seen, Rita, because she's already, in agreement with him. She won't be challenging him, you wouldn't have thought.
Well, the only surprise is that she's joining the Labor Party, not the Greens, because I would have thought the Guardian. I guess the Prime Minister is in the Socialist Left faction of Labor, so it all makes sense. But
interestingly, Rita, Christine Milne, former Greens MP, Senator, came out and attacked her on Twitter and said it was no surprise that she was going to work for Labor. So that's interesting too.
Oh, okay. Interesting indeed. I can't say I am terribly shocked. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamics work in that office and what her role will be. I don't know. I don't know why the taxpayer need to be paying these people. They're doing lines for Labor free of charge. So why employ them? Whatever. She's going to have a work cut out for her because the honeymoon is well and truly over for the Prime Minister. We saw at the tennis at the Oz Open, he was booed loudly on Sunday night. Very different to the reception he got at the last Oz Open. Let's have a look at that.
On behalf of Tennis Australia, I'd like to welcome Victorian Governor, Her Excellency, the Honourable Professor Margaret Gardner, the Australian Prime Minister, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, the Deputy Victorian Premier, the Honourable Ben Carroll. Thank you.
Ooh, they weren't liking him there. And people will say, well, every politician gets booed at sporting events, and there's some truth to that, but there's certainly a change into how the Prime Minister's being perceived now compared to the last Oz Open.
Oh, absolutely, Rita. And don't forget, this is on the international stage that he's being booed. Very embarrassing for the Australian Prime Minister. There were some people saying, well, everyone who goes to the tennis is rich and they can afford those tickets, so they're annoyed. But I don't think this is a good thing for him. No. And it shows that he's in a little bit of trouble, hence the reason he's totally overhauled his media department as well, Rita, in recent months.
And I think it's a little bit silly, simplistic to say, well, this was purely in response to him lying about the stage 3 tax cuts. I think there's a lot of ill feeling about the referendum that was hoisted on the country, that divisive referendum that failed spectacularly, and all sorts of other broken promises, including what we're seeing with prices for gas and electricity. We were promised hundreds of dollars of savings under Labor, and that hasn't materialised. In fact, prices are soaring in the wrong direction.
That's right, Rita. And he did say how prices were going to drop by $275 a year. That has not happened. So that's another broken promise. So the things are mounting up, and we are in a cost of living crisis. And when that happens, they always blame the government that's in office.
And that's what surprised me about him being at the tennis. We know he loves the tennis. Last time around, he spent just a few measly hours. He was shamed into going to the Northern Territory because they had a crime crisis there. He spent a few hours on the ground, was back at the tennis downing beers and ice creams in no time. But this time around, with that cost of living crisis worsening and people really doing it hard, the PM getting that, corporate hospitality at the tennis seemed to be a poor move. Perhaps Katherine can advise him against such.
Well, Rita, it's interesting because last year he went multiple times. He was there for days on end during the Alice Springs crime crisis. He's obviously been told this year, look, just cut it down. He was only there, from what I've seen, on the Sunday night. So he knows that this does not wash with the Australian public. So he's scaled that right back. But he's not favoured at the moment. Rita, we're basically being told, forget about the voice referendum like it never happened. That was a spectacular failure. That cost us a lot of money. And now we've got these changes to the tax cuts. The list goes on of things that haven't really worked out for him under his watch.
No, not at all. Now, let's go to an early lefties losing it. I want to show you this footage of a woman who should know better. She's old enough. She is being schooled by a 12-year-old boy who's very polite, very knowledgeable about the issue. Let's have a look.
Palestine wasn't empty. Palestine had people in it. And you can't just take over a land where people are living and say, now we plant a flag and now it's ours. You can't do that.
But the United Nations gave the land to Israel in 48.
And the Balfour Declaration was wrong. And I disagree that it's fair in any way, shape or form. And also it's an ethno state. Israel is trying to create a state where there are only Jewish people. Where else in the world do you have that?
But there are 2 million Israeli Arabs that have the same rights as Israeli Jews living in Israel.
They have the same rights.
So what does she do? She can't dispute his accurate information. So first she makes this wild allegation and then goes straight to anti-Semitism.
Hamas was set up by Israel.
Hamas was set up by Israel.
Who helped to set up Hamas?
When? Sorry. Finance Hamas?
Yeah.
I thought it was the Iranians that were financing Hamas.
No, that's propaganda. Are you Jewish?
No, it doesn't matter.
No, I just wondered, but are you a Zionist?
No, it doesn't matter.
Are you Jewish? Are you a Zionist? She doesn't even know what Zionism means if you watch the full video. But it's crazy that we're in this situation. You've got people, and I'm no doubt she probably considers herself well-educated, tolerant and inclusive, behaving in that manner.
I really like in this exchange, though, Rita, that the young lad really took it up to her and really tried to, pull out information that she knew. One thing I will say, Rita, at that exchange, which is different to a lot of others, it was very polite and courteous. Sometimes you've seen these protesters pretty disgraceful acts. We've seen them in Australia as well. So at least it was a respectful argument, but I feel like he came out on top there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it was respectful and polite purely because he just gave her facts without getting angry with some of the ridiculous things she was claiming. Now, let's go to Australian surfing brand Rip Curl, which seems to, be wanting to damage its good name and brand integrity by replacing a brave female surfer who spoke out about women's sport and protecting it from biological males. So what do? They got rid of her, replaced her with a biological male identifying as a woman. The backlash was swift, Sophie, and it seems Rip Curl has now backtracked. It's deleting a lot of their woke posturing. What's the latest on this?
Well, that's right, Rita. They've totally backpedaled because this keeps happening with corporates where they think that they're going to be inclusive by including transgender people in stories or advertising, and then they realise, no, women don't want to be represented by transgender.
They want to be replaced.
They want to be replaced. So it doesn't end well. And it goes back to the Dylan Mulvaney situation with the beer. We saw the backlash of the
Bud Light, yes.
Bud Light in America. So there was complete, the whole public turned against that brand because of what they were trying to do. So corporates need to be really careful here because it tends to be backfiring well and truly.
And our own Woolworths is finding that out with their corporate posturing about Australia Day. I mean, there was no need for them to come out and take a stand and say we're removing the merchandise, and they just seem to get themselves into a deeper and deeper hole there. Now, for Rip Curl, they've released a new video to highlight their women's line, but judging by the responses online, they have some work to do to repair the damage. People aren't buying it. They're saying this isn't enough. They're going to remember this. It just seems mad that you would have this brand built up and then you would cause reputational damage to your own brand. But where does it come from? Is it because they exist in an echo chamber and they're completely blindsided by the reaction they're going to cop, or is it an ideological thing, or how are the corporates getting themselves into this trouble?
Because they're turning within their organisations, they're turning woke, Rita, and they're going down this avenue where they're trying to please minority groups and think that everyone wants to see that. Seeing males represented, selling, wearing female swimwear. I mean, that's not going to go down well. So they're actually causing their brand to make headlines for all the wrong reasons. And then they've got to mop up the mess and try and recover. So it's just a train wreck.
Now, let's go to California, which could become the first state to require speed governors on new vehicles. A bill proposed by San Francisco State Senator Scott Wiener would mandate California vehicles from the 2027 model year onward. They would need to have speed governors limiting speeds to 10 miles per hour over posted limits. Now, I know some car enthusiasts, Soph, who are absolutely outraged about this, but this sort of stuff always starts in California and then it spreads like cancer.
Yeah, well, Rita, I think this is firstly a very bad idea. I think there'll be enormous backlash from it. And this, I also wonder safety-wise, what happens if you're trying to speed up over the 10K? You can't do it. It stops you from doing that. Is that a safety issue if you're in a situation where you do need to speed up, or in some situations? So I think you're right. This stuff starts in California and it spreads like wildfire. So we need to watch this space.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not outlandish to have situations where you might have to speed up past the speed limit to avoid a collision, for example, or all sorts of other circumstances. But they're just obsessed with control, these leftist politicians. Sophie Ellsworth, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rita.
Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. We've got so much to get through today. The lefties have been out of control in 2024. Let's start with these climate cultists targeting the Mona Lisa. How are these climate catastrophist lunatics getting so close to masterpieces armed with paint, hammers, soup in that particular instance? Of course, the artwork was protected, but where is security? Why are bystanders doing nothing? I can tell you, I would not just be standing around watching that. Now, let's go to a teacher who is ecstatic that a student has come out as non-binary. Creepy much?
One of my students just came out to me.
Now, this is disturbing. This is footage from Holocaust Memorial Day. 2 Jewish people terrorised by anti-Semites in New York City after they emerged from Temple Emmanuel. And on Holocaust Memorial Day, Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, released this statement. Let's listen to the first 10 seconds.
Today marks the International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. Across the world, people are coming together.
Now, he kept on talking for a couple of minutes there, said plenty, but guess what word he failed to mention in that statement marking Holocaust Memorial Day? Jews. No mention of the Jewish community, no mention of those words. And let's check in on some frightening levels of ignorance from young'uns who don't even know what the Holocaust is.
What is the Holocaust?
The what?
The Holocaust.
I don't know.
What is the Holocaust?
The who?
The Holocaust.
This some California stuff?
What group of people did the Nazis target?
Oh, why is it about Nazis? Kids.
What is Auschwitz?
Auschwitz, the country?
I don't know. Is it the little red mints in a container?
Something to do with the war. Back in the days, in the hologram thing.
What is Auschwitz?
Things in space.
Close. No. I'll tell you at the end. Do you know how many Jews were killed during the Holocaust?
8,000?
6 million.
Really? I did not know that.
Can you imagine how people could be just that ignorant? But here we are. Now it's time to check in on the leader of the free world. Joe Biden is having a rough time.
Beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes.
I'm sure this next clip will be more coherent and not filled with verifiable lies.
Donald Trump, when he was commander-in-chief, refused to visit a cemetery, U.S. cemetery outside of Paris for fallen American soldiers. And he referred to those heroes, and I quote, as suckers and losers. He actually said that. He said that. How dare he say that? How dare he talk about my son and all of us just like that?
No, he actually didn't say that, you enormous liar. But you're watching him these days, you wonder if he even knows he's lying. If someone else is writing those lines, and I wonder if he has any full comprehension of what they are getting him to say. But he appears to be a bit of an election denier as well, the president these days. Let's have a listen to this dangerous talk.
Hello, Virginia. And the real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
The real governor? Oh dear me, we can't have that. But I think you're all wanting to know right now, what about the price of Snickers? Yes, Snickers.
Greedflation, shrinkflation. You see that article about the Snickers bars? Well, it's going to stop. America, we're tired of being played for suckers.
I have no idea what's happening either. Now, there's another lefty losing it in the White House. Check out the vice president's levels of delusion here.
So you're right, we have a lot of accomplishments, and I think what the American people want most in their leaders is that we actually get things done, and we have done it. We haven't taken adequate credit for it, frankly, and we got to do a better job of getting the word out about what we have accomplished and who did it.
And Joe Biden's campaign co-chair, Jim Clyburn, isn't making much sense either.
And what did he do? He created what we call the little sort of, that act. A lot of people wonder what it's about. To repair what was wrong.
Now, here's an anti-lefty losing it, a young man schooling a leftist fool.
All the Black, Indigenous, and people of color, your ancestors were scholars.
No, they weren't. My great-grandpa was an illiterate sugarcane peasant in colonial Japan, in colonial Taiwan.
Now, here's the ultimate lefty losing it. It's the 5-year anniversary of the great hate crime hoax perpetuated by actor Jussie Smollett, a ridiculous fantasy tale that was obviously a lie but was accepted uncritically by the race-baiting US media and US politicians, including Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who posted this at the time. He said, "What happened today to Jussie Smollett must never be tolerated in this country. We must stand up and demand that we no longer give this hate safe harbour, that homophobia and racism have no place on our streets or in our hearts. We are with you, Jussie." So let's have a look at what really happened. First, here's the parody take.
More hillbilly racist accent. Right.
Oh, yes. The Ku Klux Klan accent.
Yes. Okay. Do it to over. Again.
Hey, boy, aren't you that gay from Empire?
Yes, I am. I'm the gay Tupac. What's good?
Who are the gay Tupac?
No, the white accent.
Hey, dummy, you gotta use your other accent.
God damn, boy. Yes, that's it. The one from Empire? Yes.
Hey, this is MAGA country now. You in MAGA country now,
What? That's right. I am furiously ran rope around his neck. Faster, guy. Come on.
Hey, stop.
Somebody help me.
Like a gay seagull. Stop screaming.
Punch. I mean, violence.
Run away in a direction where you won't be seen.
All right. Get the water and pull on my face, okay? Water in my face. Go. Oh, they put bleach. So bleach. Oh, water bleach together. Water bleach. Oh, no.
And don't you ever in your goddamn life come to our subway, nigga.
That's right. Oh, we don't like little neighborhood. You don't belong here. Cut. Goddamn the plane. Hurry up.
Oh, you all right?
Do another take.
Right?
I'm good.
Oh, I thought you hurt yourself.
You got paid, right? Got paid?
I don't know. You see
Check your
cash app? You send do cash app.
I seen cash app.
No, you
did not. I did not hit that
change.
change.
You told me if I have Venmo. You not say cash app.
And here are the two Nigerian brothers who were actually hired by Smollett to assault him, recounting how it all went down.
So I saw him out the corner of my eye, and I was like, okay, that's him. Let's go. We gotta go get this Empire fat. Yeah, that's him. Is that him?
That's that neck. Get that neck.
Oh, he's moving fast. Come on, let's get him.
Get that neck.
Let's get him. As we crossed the street, we said, hey, to get his attention.
Hey, Nick.
Hey. He turned around, looked at us, and that's when we started yelling the famous slurs he wanted us to yell. Hey.
Aren't you that Empire?
Hey, Empire fat Nick. It's MAGA country. Yeah. And then he said, what did you say to me? And then that's when I threw the first punch at him. I held the blow because I didn't want to hurt him, of course.
That is just champagne comedy there. I'm not sure which one's funnier, the skit we saw first or the actual recounting by the two men hired to assault Jussie Smollett. And people bought this story. It was so ridiculous on the face of it. And that's something that Dave Chappelle talks about here.
When he was walking down the street late at night, two white men came out of the shadows with MAGA hats on, beat him up, tied a rope around his neck, called him all kinds of and put some bleach on him and ran off into the night. This shit was like international news. And everybody was furious, especially in Hollywood. It's all over everybody's Twitter feed and Instagram page, justice for Jussie and all this shit. The whole country was up in arms. He was talking about it all the time on the news. And for some reason, African Americans, we were like oddly quiet. We were so quiet about this that the gay community started accusing African American community of being homophobic for not supporting him. But what they didn't understand is that we were supporting him with our silence. Because we understood that this was clearly lying. None of these details added up at all.
No, none of the details added up at all. But the left, including Democrat politicians like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and the media, were happy to unleash a race war based on obvious lies. Joining me now is royal commentator and host of the To Die For Daily podcast, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, an opinion piece published in The Hill titled Harry and Meghan Knives Out in Jamaica takes a very grim view indeed of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's recent public appearances. According to national security experts, Harry and Meghan may not be aware they are being manipulated to destabilise the Commonwealth. What more can you reveal about this story?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I missed you so much. I'm so glad to see you, and I enjoyed following you along on social media. But that's right. This is such a powerful piece. These experts claiming that Russian and Chinese disinformation campaigns to subvert the Commonwealth and the UK's remaining realms has long been underway. And they believe that Harry and Meghan are being manipulated into feeding into those efforts. They say Harry and Meghan are incapable of reading the room at a geostrategic level, devoid of much needed Whitehall guidance. They are foolishly playing into the propaganda hands of Russia and China. They say Moscow and Beijing are out to destroy the Commonwealth headed by King Charles, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex continue to help them at every turn. Due to the lack of awareness, the Hill security experts are calling for Harry and Meghan to be formally stripped of their royal titles.
Wow. Well, I'm shocked that these two would not be across the geopolitical issues of the area, and that would not be shocked to learn that they are being the useful idiots of people with some sinister intentions for the Commonwealth. Prince Harry's also got dramas on another front, Kinsey. There's calls for him to resign from the board of the African parks due to allegations of all sorts of abuse, rape and violence committed by eco-guards. Human rights campaigners have demanded the Duke's departure while the conservation organisation undergoes an investigation over these allegations that guards have raped and beaten Indigenous people in the Congo. Kinsey, has Harry responded to these demands that he distance himself from this organisation?
Not specifically those demands quite yet, but a spokesperson for Harry's Archewell Foundation told the Mail on Sunday when the Duke became aware of these serious allegations, he immediately escalated them to the CEO and chairman of the board of African Parks. They say that those were the appropriate people to handle the next steps. However, Survival International, the London-based human rights organization, they say that they were the first to approach Harry about the abuse in May of last year. Harry responded to them by saying he would make the organization aware of the situation. There was little to no improvement. So now Survival International is asking Harry to show solidarity for the locals and the victims by quitting. They say, we hope that his stepping down from the board of directors would give a clear signal to the organization that human rights abuses in the name of conservation are not tolerated anymore. Now, African Parks did respond to the investigation by the Mail on Sunday, saying that they have a zero tolerance policy for any form of abuse. However, you know, if they've known about this since May and nothing's been done, you have to question the leadership within that organization.
Now, let's go to Meghan. There's all sorts of rumours that she may be going back into acting. Hollywood, of course, she was a part of the Suits series back in 2018, and there's apparently going to be some sort of a spin-off of Suits. It's going to be filmed in Los Angeles, and she may score a role. Is this something that's likely to happen? I mean, she stepped away from the limelight, didn't she? Didn't she want to have some privacy? Wasn't that the whole point of fleeing the royals and the media?
Right. No, I tend to agree with you. You're absolutely right that it is being reported that in this new Suits spinoff, there's a character that's cut for her specifically to a T. However, I would argue that we did not see Meghan reunite with the cast of Suits at the Golden Globes, a few weeks ago, which would have been a strong, independent statement reminding the world that she was somebody before she married Harry. And she opted not to do that because I believe socially, she thinks she's risen to a much higher level than fourth on the Suits call sheet. I don't think she would consider a project like this seriously. I think that she probably truly thinks that this is beneath her.
She probably sees herself as more of a, I don't know, Princess Grace starring role as opposed to a bit player in a TV series. Because she was a bit player in Suits. She was certainly part of the cast, but she wasn't the star or even, the top few characters in that series. Now, let's go to a story that, the allegations here are quite disturbing. I'm going to read directly from the New York Post piece on this. It's all about WWE founder Vince McMahon, who's resigned from wrestling giant TKO Group and the subsidiary WWE after some shocking allegations in a bombshell suit. If you don't know how massive the WWE is, its Monday Night Raw program is going to be streaming exclusively on Netflix as part of a new $5 billion agreement. $5 billion. This is a massive, massive entertainment giant. And this is going to be the first time in years, Kinsey, perhaps decades, there's no McMahon running the show. This has all come about after a former employee, Janelle Grant, said she was sexually abused and trafficked by Vince McMahon. The New York Post reports Grant, who worked in the company's legal and talent departments, alleged that McMahon forced her to have sex with WWE icons and executives, defecated on her during a threesome, and aggressively used sex toys on her that he named after wrestling stars, which caused her injuries. This is all according to the bombshell suit filed Thursday in Connecticut federal court. Vince McMahon has released a statement denying any wrongdoing following these allegations. But Kinsey, there's a history here of Vince McMahon paying women who have made all sorts of unsavory allegations.
$14.6 million to various women that accused him of sexual misconduct. I mean, I don't think, and I am not a judge or a jury here, but I don't think you shell out that kind of money unless there is something. And this alleged victim, at the end of whatever this relationship was, because the internet has been incredibly critical of her and, horribly. They've been, suggesting that she was just his sugar baby. But at the end of whatever this was, Grant received a $1 million installment after signing an NDA. It's hard to look at the cost and say, no, the guy's completely innocent, because that is an unbelievable amount of money to silence individuals.
Yeah, and apparently there was more to be paid as part of that agreement, and it wasn't paid, and now we have this lawsuit. Now, I vowed that we weren't going to ever talk about this again, but here we are. It's 2024. They're still together, and Taylor Swift could be making a 14,000-kilometre detour in the middle of her incredible world tour. It's sellouts all around the world. And all just to see her man, Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, play in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs secured their spot in the Super Bowl with a 17-10 win over the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. Kinsey, what do you make of this? We said we weren't going to talk about it, but it's leading the entertainment news. We can't ignore it.
That's right. And I would say I'm 100% confident that she will be there. My significant other works for the NFL, so technically works with Travis Kelce. So I do anticipate seeing her there. It's the best thing that's ever happened for the NFL. I mean, can you imagine after they went 110% in the Black Lives Matter direction, people turned off their televisions because they wanted freedom. They wanted an escape, and they felt like they were being preached to politically. And all of a sudden, Taylor Swift comes on the radar. And now little girls are sitting at home watching football with their dads. People are showing up to the games just so they feel like they're a little bit closer to Taylor Swift. She is a powerhouse. She's very influential. And I do believe that the NFL is beyond grateful for her existence. And Travis Kelce should be, because Travis Kelce should be. That's where I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's so amusing watching all the different reactions, because you see the ones who are just absolutely enraptured by her involvement in football, just the fact that she's attending his games and is obviously very enthusiastic about what's happening. But then there are those who are, I don't know, some of the hardcore football fans who are thoroughly sick of all the shots, all the attention, all the commentary being about her and this romance, as opposed to what's happening on the field and all the other dramas that go into a game. So the reaction has been strong, and I'm just waiting for the album, because I don't know. I don't think it's going to last. And the music is going to be fantastic, because this is what she does. She has these high-profile romances. She typically dumps them and then writes a best-selling album. So it's a win-win all around. If you ask me, Kinsey Schofield, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Senior Editor-at-Large at Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, let's start with these astonishing comments from a congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, speaking in Somali at a Minneapolis hotel. She boasted about how the US will do what we want to push Somalia's interests. She also said, as Somalis, one day we will go after our missing territories. And she said she was Somali first, Muslim second. She didn't mention being American or caring about American interests. Josh, she's proclaiming here that she has an allegiance to a foreign nation. Surely these comments are not only deeply disturbing, but grounds for expulsion.
Rita, in a just world, they would absolutely be grounds for expulsion. They're also wildly hypocritical beyond words that I can possibly describe. I mean, let's recall that as soon as she was elected to Congress back in the fall of 2018, it took Ilhan Omar, maybe a month and a half or so until she started tweeting about how, quote, it's all about the Benjamins, baby. Who can forget that one? And she was talking back then about AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups operating in the United States. So, she would be the very first person. Let's just say, Rita, let's say hypothetically, this was a Jewish member of Congress who was saying that he or she had an allegiance to Israel. Can you imagine what the reaction would be from Ilhan Omar, from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, all the rest of these utter clowns there? But, Ilhan Omar is from Mogadishu. She's from Somalia. That is a third world at best country. I mean, if there is such thing as a fourth or fifth world country, that would be the way to describe Somalia. Black Hawk Down was there in the early 1990s. Ilhan Omar's life has benefited tremendously from this country, the United States, taking her in with open arms, something that I frankly think America, in retrospect, probably should not have done. But she has personally benefited so much from this country. And for her to get up there and say that, no, her allegiance is actually to a foreign country, a country, by the way, that harbors terrorism, a country that is in no way whatsoever an ally of the United States. Al-Shabaab operates with impunity there in Somalia. Somalia, in many ways, is complicit with the chokehold that the Houthi rebels have over the Red Sea waterway right now. So it's just absolutely appalling. And if the U.S. Congress were functioning properly, which unfortunately all too often it does not, then yes, to answer your question, she would be expelled immediately. This is reprehensible stuff. It is frankly and patently un-American, is unpatriotic. It goes against everything. It goes against everything that a member of Congress should stand for.
Josh, you're absolutely right about what's happening in Somalia, but the pride she has for that country and the way she speaks about it and its interests and its people and wanting to expand its territories, we don't hear that sort of talk from American politicians about America. And it goes beyond her. I mean, how many Democrats express that sort of pride in America and what it has achieved and what are it's in its best interests? The Democrats seem to have an anti-American problem.
Yeah, it's really well said, Rita. It's a very astute observation. When's the last time that you've seen a leading Democrat, drape themselves in the American flag? When's the last time you've seen someone, put their hand over their heart and say the Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem, with any degree of earnest or sincerity or happiness or joy for being blessed to be born in this country? It kind of reminds me of something I was saying to some friends last year. I was walking around the neighborhood on a weekend afternoon. I said to some friends, I said, you know what? You can usually tell who here in this neighborhood is a conservative and who is a progressive, not necessarily because the progressives all have these crazy, Black Lives Matter, we open our doors for this, yes, those signs do exist. Yeah. But honestly, Rita, there's one item that some homes here have and some do not have. That is the telltale sign. And you know what it is. It's the American flag. If you are flying an American flag at this point, you're a conservative. If you are not, you're probably a liberal.
That is so right. And I was just in America and that was very evident indeed. Now, yesterday we heard the tragic news that 3 American troops had been killed and as many as 34 injured in a drone attack on an army base near the Jordan-Syria border. The attack is believed to have happened at an army outpost called Tower 22 in northeast Jordan. And the US says Iranian-backed radical militants are responsible. How is Joe Biden going to handle this, Josh? Because there are politicians calling for a response, an armed response against Iran. I'm sure he doesn't want to be involved in another war in the Middle East. How is he going to respond to this? Because he can't ignore it.
No, he literally cannot ignore it. So here's the predicament that Joe Biden finds himself in, is that he wishes more than anything that the U.S. not get involved into another conflict, especially in the Middle East, which is a region of the world that Barack Obama and Joe Biden have tried so hard to get America out of. Ironically, their means of doing so is to embolden one of our worst enemies, the Islamic Republic of Iran, but we can kind of hold that to aside for now. But he is trying so hard, whatever his feelings about the Iranian malocracy may be, he's trying so hard to get America not involved in another war. Here's the problem, Rita. The problem is that the region is on fire right now. It's not just Gaza. Hezbollah on Israel's northern boundary is raining in rockets. I was actually just in Israel earlier this month. I didn't realize how bad it is in the Israeli north on the Lebanese border until I spoke with people. There are 100,000 Israelis who have not lived in their homes up north near Lebanon for 3.5, almost 4 months now. That's a very, very, very fiery situation that could explode any moment. Look at what's happening with the Houthis in Yemen on the Red Sea. There, you're talking there about one of the most important chokeways, one of the most important waterways in the world. Roughly 10% of global commerce flows through the Red Sea on the way up to the Suez Canal. You have these third world Islamist slave holding. They literally own slaves, the Houthis, these absolute thugs firing indiscriminately on commercial vessels, committing 21st century piracy. These ships are, speaking of inflation, these ships now have to go down around the southern tip of Africa, below South Africa, just to avoid the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. That gets passed down to consumers. That results in increased prices at the pump and frankly in anything. So now you have this horrible, horrible tragedy. Unfortunately, it's the world's most easily foreseeable tragedy. There's been over 150 attacks from Iran-backed militias operating inside Iraq and Syria against U.S. military base. 150. It might even be 160 by the time that I'm done talking with the sentence here. That's the rate at which it's happening. Over a month ago, around Christmas time, there was an American soldier on a different base who was hit so hard that he entered a coma. He just woke up from his coma, thank God, within the past week. So Joe Biden has no choice. My point is that the war is there, and I'm not calling for bombs dropping inside Tehran. I think that's a very bad idea, on the contrary. But you have to do something. You have to strike back at these militias inside Syria and Iraq. You probably have to strike back at the Houthis much harder than you've done in Yemen, and you might also consider taking the fight more directly to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon as well. All of these groups are the various tentacles of the Iranian regime. They are the head of the snake. They call the shots when it comes to all of this chaos currently afflicting the region.
Now, I can tell you, Iran was demoralized and isolated under the Trump administration. It's been emboldened by the Biden administration, and I think that situation is only going to get worse in the coming months. On that tragedy with the loss of life there, Joe Biden's spokesman John Kirby was asked if the president will attend the dignified transfer of the US troops killed by those Iranian proxies. This was his response.
John, do you expect the president would go to Dover for the dignified transfer when these Americans are returned to the United States?
I don't have anything on his schedule to speak to.
Now, that's just not good enough. The president must be there, and this time he should refrain from looking at his watch. I just think that should not even be a question. He has to be there for that. Now, let's talk about the illegal immigration crisis. It's worsening under the Biden administration. Record numbers have crossed illegally. And we've just had the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision side with the Biden administration, directing Texas to allow federal border agents access to the Mexico border, where the state had deployed razor wire. You wrote a brilliant article arguing that Texas has the right to interpret the Constitution independently amid Biden's failure to secure the border. Tell me more about this. And I talked earlier about this split in the US. We've now got 24 Republican governors pledging to stand with Texas, to stand with Governor Greg Abbott.
So first of all, an astonishing ruling from the United States Supreme Court. 5-4 decision, and basically saying that Border Patrol can go down there and physically take down barriers that Texas put up. Unfortunately, it wasn't just John Roberts, our very mercurial swing justice, but it was also Amy Coney Barrett, unfortunately, the Trump nominee who voted with the left there, which is part of a very troubling trend, by the way, Rita. If Trump does retake office come this November, which I hope that he does, we're going to have to do a lot better, actually, than Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh. They're right more often than they're wrong, but neither is Clarence Thomas, neither is Sam Alito. But table that for another day. Yeah. When it comes to the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border, look, it's very straightforward. So America has a unique constitutional system. It was drafted in 1787. It's since been duplicated in many ways throughout the world. We basically have a system of dual spheres of sovereignty, where both the national government and the 50 state governments are themselves sovereign entities within their own legitimate spheres of influence. What that means at the state level is that the states have the right to exclude. The right to exclude is the very defining feature of sovereignty. The late great Justice Antonin Scalia explicated this at great length in his brilliant writing in a 2012 case called Arizona versus United States, where then we were dealing with an illegal immigration crisis, not in Texas, but in Arizona. And what Scalia asked then is, he said, if Arizona does not have the right to secure its borders when the federal government, then the Obama administration, when they fail to do so, then Arizona ceases to be a sovereign state. And when you contemplate the fact that it was actually the 50 states in America that created the national government, our national government is one of strictly enumerated powers. They were the ones who created the government in the first place. They never would have bothered to create this whole national government if you would give the national government the idea that they could intrude and tell you who to let in when thousands, hundreds of thousands are flooding in over the course of a month, 2 months, however long the time is. So it's just utterly insane there. But I do feel compelled to make one important distinction. What the court actually said is that U.S. Border Patrol has the right to go in and to snip this razor wire that Texas has put up. They did not say anything about whether Texas can actually put up new razor wire. So I think that Greg Abbott and his Department of Public Safety are well within their rights to do exactly that. And the most important part here, Rita, Biden's going to blink. He's bluffing, because his approval rating on the immigration issue here in America is -25, -30. He is not going to risk a grand showdown against the big red state, the state of Texas, joined, as you said, by 24 other Republican governors. He's ultimately going to bluff. Greg Abbott should call that bluff, and he stands to benefit politically from it.
Now, Joe Biden's border czar, Kamala Harris, recently sat down with Katie Couric and listened to this weapon-grade chutzpah from Harris, who said, "We would lose this democracy if we elect a president who would weaponize the Department of Justice and go after their political enemies." She was talking about Trump, not Biden there. Let's have a look.
November of 2024, binary. And on the other side, you've got someone who has said that if he were back in office, he would weaponize the Department of Justice. Someone who has openly applauded insurrectionists as patriots. Someone who has said that they will go after their political enemies and applauds dictators indicating that he would be one. So let's be really clear about what's at stake. And then, yes, of course, there is then a desire that let's get out there because we can't lose this democracy.
You know what? I don't know if chutzpah covers it. I mean, that is just extreme gaslighting and projection, considering what's happening in the US right now. Before I let you go, Josh, let's have a look at this Saturday Night Live skit. This mob are not just painfully unfunny, but utterly clueless.
Hasn't lost a step. Trump did have a slight stumble this week while talking about banks, and he introduced an interesting new term called debank.
We're also going to place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank.
I don't know what the hell debank means, but he might have to take de-ambulance to see the doctor.
Josh, it appears that they think Trump invented the term debank, that it's just some figment of his imagination. How could they be so clueless to what's happened in just the last couple of years?
Yeah, Rita, some of us have been writing about this problem for at least 4 or 5 years now. I mean, this term has been around in discourse for a while. It happens to point to an extraordinarily troubling phenomenon, by the way, which is where, we've seen it time and time again. Bank of America a few years ago stopped taking as customers new Second Amendment, new gun rights organizations. I think the NRA found its own banking accounts sapped from the Bank of America, if I remember correctly. Some figures on the right, like Laura Loomer, have been totally sapped of their access to PayPal and Venmo and various other financial intermediaries like that. This is a big problem because what you're dealing here with people's access to capital. You're dealing with people's ability to save, to invest, to take out loans, to build businesses, ultimately to build the means with which to thrive and to flourish and to pass down intergenerational wealth, God willing, to their children. So this is very, very serious stuff. It's actually a heck of a lot, even more serious, I think, than deplatforming, which is kind of its analog when it comes to big tech. Deplatforming is a real concern, to be clear, but you're talking there about something that's a little less than your literal livelihood. It's similar because a lot of people make their living on these platforms. I'm not trying to downplay it, but the point is that debanking is a really, really big problem. I've been writing about it for a while, like I said.
Oh, absolutely.
I think a lot of the same remedies for deplatforming actually apply there. I think common carrier regulation, treating these guys as public utilities, which is not necessarily my first choice of remedy. That's not necessarily kind of the more limited government answer, but unfortunately it might be necessary. But regardless of what the remedy is, this term has been around for a long time. And I'm actually personally very happy that Donald Trump is talking.
And in the last couple of years, it really became very much a mainstream term because we saw what happened with the Canadian truckers, the way that was used as a weapon against them, debanking. So for everyone on the Saturday Night Live team, from the presenters to the writers and producers, for all of them to somehow be clueless about this phenomenon is disturbing. Josh Hammer, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rita.
That's it for this week's The Rita Panahi Show Overtime. I'll be back Friday night at 7 p.m. for The Rita Panahi Show, and I'll see you Sunday morning for Outsiders.